And now to know that there's an agency that came together to help people with their laundry, I realize how big of a piece of your budget it can be.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful for the support, and I hope that it can continue and that we can do whatever we need to do to keep it going.
Amen.
And sometimes, $2.50, $4 could be a lot when you're on a fixed income. So this program means a lot.
Clean clothes, a lovely way to help.
I love you guys. You guys always. God bless the hairless man.
Thank you. Look out for this bag. Thank God. The food of God is wonderful, feeding people. Great heart, great spirit, great food.
God bless the food and the people that serve you.
God is good.
Hello, General Synod. Are y'all out there? Hello, General Synod. I love the gavel. I now call the third plenary of our 31st General Synod to order. And I wonder if you can sing with me. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. One more time. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. All those folks at Mike 5. All those folks at Mike 5. Okay. Well, I think all of you know Synod is an expensive meeting to run, and we've managed to hold registration fees and many of the other Synod fees consistent from 2 years ago. And to do that, it's because we've had some amazing partners that have contributed to our effort, very generous sponsorships. So before we begin this evening's business, let's hear from the first of our partners, the Church Building and Loan Fund. Thank you, Church Building and Loan Fund, for your generous support of our General Synod and the overall ministries of the United Church of Christ. And friends, it is time to start with our speakouts at microphone 5.
Hello, I'm Bob Inderbitson from the Connecticut Conference. I support equal rights for all adoptees to their original birth certificate. I adopted my daughter Victoria when she was 6 years old. She's now 17, a child of God, raised in love by this United Church of Christ. When Victoria turns 18, she is permitted to get a copy of her original birth certificate. But around our country, poor legislative policies restrict adult adoptees in some states and in not others from accessing their original birth certificate. But will this lead to unwanted contact between adult adoptees and birth parents? While these instances are very rare, even women who are survivors of rape have supported giving the children they have placed in the care of adoption the same rights as other citizens, and that doing so has helped validate the existence of birth parents, first mothers, and birth fathers. Dear friends, God's creation in adopted persons deserves far better than anonymity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, General Synod. I'm Linda Jaramillo, and I hail from the Central Pacific Conference of the United Church of Christ. Thank you, Sue, for reminding us to be the sanctuary. If anybody heard Dr. William Barber yesterday, he told us we need to take the sanctuary into the streets. So here's your chance. Tomorrow, 1:30, at the Pratt Street entrance of the Convention Center, we will be gathering to march to the ICE office, the Immigration and Control Enforcement. We're going to go tell them a story about deportations that have to end. So please join us. Join us tomorrow. Take our sanctuary into the city at 1:30 Pratt Street entrance. It's only it's a 10-minute walk, only a block and a half, and we'll be doing a press conference there. You'll be done in plenty of time to come back to plenary. Please join us tomorrow, 1:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Birmingham Drummond of the Massachusetts Conference in the midst of transfer to the Connecticut Conference. Just like Andover Newton Theological School, which I serve as Dean of the Faculty, Vice President for Academic Affairs, and am currently serving as a visiting member of the Yale Divinity School faculty, along with 3 other Andover Newton faculty members who've moved to New Haven, and 4 affiliates we've met at Yale Divinity School. If you would like to learn more about how Andover Newton is relocating to New Haven, Connecticut, and forming an affiliation with Yale Divinity School for the purpose of educating congregational ministers in a new generation, please come talk to me. And also know that if you have candidates in your life who cannot choose between a freestanding UCC seminary and a research divinity school, look no further. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 5.
My name is Chuck Morkin. I'm from Holyoke United Congregational Church in Massachusetts. I'm here to tell you about the Awakening Study Conference. This will be our 4th one. Every 2 years we do one. And I want to tell you that the theme this year is pathfinding in an age of polarization. I think that applies to lots of us. Pathfinding in an age of polarization. And our speakers are Bart D. Ehrman from North Carolina, Dina E. Grant, who is coming up to Hartford Seminary, Chung Young Kyung from New York Union Seminary, Carol Howard Merritt, and Peter Rollins. And we're all going to be listening for ways to find path in the way ahead. And by the way, we welcome people from all over the country. I don't know that we can actually welcome everybody who's here. This conference is April 26th to 29th, 2018, and it's in Holyoke, Massachusetts, and it's called Awakenings, and we welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The speaker at microphone 5.
David Knapp, Connecticut Conference. For 37 years, the Boy Scouts of America discriminated against gay boys and leaders. But thanks to your efforts and those of many others, gay, bi, and trans youth and adults are welcomed back to Scouting. Now I think we have an obligation to help rebuild inclusive Scout units in UCC churches. Scouting is a great program for learning practical skills, values, and leadership, for making friends and having experiences Scouters carry for life. The UCC Scouting Working Group is eager to be a resource for your Scouting programs. Visit our webpage at ucc.org/scouting or send us an email at scouting@ucc.org. I marched in the New York Pride Parade for the 24th year in my Boy Scout uniform, carrying a sign saying, "Join the Boy Scouts, make America great." Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 5.
My name is Wanda Scott, and I'm the Chief Advancement Officer at Pacific School of Religion and a proud member of the UCC. Greetings on behalf of our President, David Vasquez-Levy, Board Chair, Don Hill, and the Board of Trustees. As we mark our 150th year, we have innovative plans that include maintaining our core campus in Berkeley, providing student housing, and selling our residential real estate to reinvest in programs and the endowment. We welcome a new dean to lead a diverse, outstanding faculty committed to social justice and an exciting curriculum training spiritual leaders for social transformation. We are grateful for our UCC partnership, best embodied by our alumni, including Loie Powell, who is receiving the Antoinette Brown Award, and during the PSR dinner tomorrow night, we will honor posthumously John Deckenbach with a Distinguished Alumni Award. Right. Come visit us at booth 914, and while you're there, buy a t-shirt. Thank you, and have a great Senate.
Thank you. One last speaker for this go-around at microphone 5.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Blood. I'm the conference minister of the Maine Conference. I'm here with Quinn Gormley, who is the dean, one of the deans of Pride Camp, also known as Queer Camp, at Pilgrim Lodge in West Gardner, Maine this summer. We are looking for youth ages 15 to 18 who would love to come and have a week beside a beautiful lake in the woods with camp and explore questions that are of concern to them through the Our Whole Lives curriculum. Registration is free. We have a grant. We might even contribute toward travel expenses. We will have housing by age, not gender. We will have a program planned by an interfaith planning team, and we would love to welcome anyone interested into a safe and supportive and nurturing community. See Quinn, who will be standing at the back of the hall later on. See some of us at the main table if you would like. Here we go.
Thank you very much. I know there were some speakers lined up. Our next speak out will be at the start of tomorrow morning's business session, and the sign up for that speak out will be immediately following this plenary. Please see Ken Daniel, who is in the middle of the hall. Ken, will you wave there by microphone 5 after we wrap up this evening, and he'll get you scheduled. Thank you all. We've changed something up at this synod, a number of things up at this synod, but one of those will be that at the beginning and end of each plenary session, we will be allowing time for theological reflection. The first of our 2 theological reflectors for General Synod 31 is Reverend Dr. Damaris D. Whitaker. And Dr. Whitaker has served, she gets a shout out there. Dr. Whitaker has served as minister at Center Church, First Church of Christ in Hartford, Connecticut, since 2012. Previously, she was the Director of Marketing and Development at the Christian Activities Council of Hartford and co-pastor at Iglesia Cristiana Nueva Esperanza, UCC, also in Hartford. An active speaker and advocate on issues of domestic violence, women's leadership, and healthcare. Dr. Whitaker has worked in grassroots organizations that provide pastoral and substance abuse counseling. She holds a doctorate of ministry from the New York Theological Seminary. Please help me welcome her on stage now.
Thank you. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. We heard that when we came in. We sang to it. If you are like me, who grew up in a Baptist Pentecostal tradition, you swayed to it. Maybe you raised your hands and you sang, "There is a river whose stream make glad the city of God." But before there were rivers and streams, there was rain. And there was rain that downpoured on so many places, that came down the mountains onto the valleys. And I don't know about you, my friends, but it feels like it has been downpouring on us since we got to Synod. It is downpouring not because yesterday we had a downpour, but because the Spirit of God is just falling down on us in ways that we did not anticipate. In ways that have awakened places inside of us that we did not know were sleeping. In places that were empty and now they are full with this new water of the Spirit. But I know that this wonderful, wonderful experience of downpouring of the Spirit of God is not just contained here at Synod. I know for a fact that in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island has been raining by storms. And not only has been raining hard on us, but we, for a long time, we stood there and we were wondering why we were so wet for so long by ourselves. And then we decided that it was better to be wet together and see what stream was going to form when 3 conferences will be together as one. And so we had this amazing opportunity to see something new be born. And we then decided to invite our president and general minister, Don Dorhauer, so he can be a witness to this new birth, to this new life. And he came all the way down from wherever he was in the world to be in Connecticut to see a baby be born. And there, let me tell you, we do not know what the name of the baby is going to be, what she or he or whatever is going to be will do for a living, but we certainly know that a baby was born. And I also hear that there has been some really, really amazing downpouring in the conference in New York, because I think that you may have missed that yesterday on this stage, the Collegiate Churches of New York, the oldest corporation in America, came and became part or affirmed their commitment and unity to the United Church of Christ. And we are now one church. It has been raining, my friends. And I don't remember the last time we were so challenged to do something new. These last couple of days, we heard from so many wonderful speakers. We didn't realize until we got here that some of us have already been in some barrel that was in some kind of rope, and we then realized that that's what was happening with us. And then we came here to Synod thinking that we're going to be refreshed and relaxed. But God is challenging us. God is challenging us to go through the rain. It was yesterday afternoon that I was standing on one side of the street, and I had to make it to my hotel room in order to be on time for my next appointment. And I had a choice. I could have waited there and be late, or I could have just run through the rain. And I waited for a minute, and someone said, it's just going to be 5 minutes. But then it wasn't. And I had to make a choice. And I said, you know, I'm just going to time the street light. And when it changes, I'm going to run for it. But I did not anticipate that my sandals did not let me run as fast as I wanted to. And just halfway down the street, as I was crossing the street, I found myself unable to run. So by the time I reached the door of my hotel room, I was soaking wet. But when I went to my room and I put in the key and I was just dripping, the first thing I did was to kick off my sandals. And I think that every single preacher, every single hymn, every single hug that we have received, every single private conversation that we have experienced here at Synod is pretty much yelling to us that we need to take the shackles off our feet so that we can move from being an institution to being a movement that is filled with the Spirit of God. And as we enter the plenary in just a few moments, I want to remind you of these words. The tools that were used to build the balcony are not the same tools that need to be used to take it down. And as we enter the business of the church, may the flowing of the rain that makes streams and rivers flow in each and every one of our tables so that we can have courage to move from being an institution to being a movement for justice and peace. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Whitaker, for starting us off in such a wonderful way. So, friends, we've had a lot of fun. We've done some amazing work together already, and now we get down to the business. So let's all roll up our sleeves and let's get started. Please know that as a rule, committees are allotted approximately 15 minutes to handle their business before the floor of General Synod. Please remember that we have microphones that are colored. The green microphones on either end, numbers 1 and 2, are for speaking in favor of a motion. Numbers 3 and 4, the red ones, are speaking against the motion. Number 5, the yellow microphone, takes precedence for points of order. And number 6 is for amendments back there by our parliamentarians table. Please also remember that standing rule number 20F means that speakers at the microphones 1, 2, 3, and 4 are allotted 1 minute for their comments this year, and speakers at microphone 6 have 2 minutes to make amendments. So those are the rules, the standing rules, which have been out there for quite some time now. So with these instructions in mind, I want to thank our committee process team. The facilitators of that team have been Roy Mosley from Northern California Nevada Conference, Dennis Frischimore from the Indiana-Kentucky Conference, and Susie Townsley from the Connecticut Conference. And the team is staffed by David Anderson from the Pacific Northwest Conference. And I would invite all of these folks to stand and be recognized at this time. Would you all stand? Oh, they're all over there in the corner. Thank you so much. They, along with the committee chairs that you've all been working with, have worked tirelessly to ensure that the business of General Synod comes before us in a timely and orderly fashion. So at this time, I would like to ask all of the committee chairs to rise as you are able so that you may be recognized by the 31st General Synod. All the committee chairs. There we go. Thank you for your hard work. So without further ado, we are going to take on committee number 1. Chairperson Richard Evers will come. Is it Edders? I'm sorry. Edens. Hold on. Let me put on my glasses. I was just being vain. Let me try this again. Edens, there you go.
It's the garden of with an S.
There you go. Thank you. Please, I call on you to present the recommended actions of Committee 1. And assigned to this committee was the resolution on enhanced support of American missionary churches that participated in the merger forming the United Church of Christ. Please note that this is the only piece of business that this committee is bringing to the Synod.
Thank you. I'm Reverend Richard Edens from the Southern Conference, chairperson of Resolution Committee 1 on enhanced support of American missionary churches that participated in the merger forming the United Church of Christ. Our committee received the resolution submitted by the Ministers for Racial, Social, and Economic Justice. We heard the passion of the resolution as there are a number of congregations and institutions with deep roots within our larger tradition whose existence and ability to fulfill the purpose for which they are founded are in jeopardy. While the received resolution used the American Missionary Association heritage exclusively to establish this deep tradition within the UCC, we modified the received resolution to be more inclusive, including, for example, the Afro-Christian tradition. Our work, let me just note, begins with line 68 with the first therefore. If you're looking at your app, please be aware that there's a new link, and it's under resolutions as recommended by the Synod committees. Working by consensus, we modified the 4 therefore paragraphs before adopting all the changes by a unanimous voice vote. So on behalf of Committee 1, I move that the 31st General Synod adopt the resolution on enhanced support of American missionary churches that participated in the merger forming the United Church of Christ and recommend approval as amended by the committee.
Thank you, Reverend Edens. And would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, I would. Sisters and brothers, remember with me that following the flood, Genesis 9, in the midst of escape from slavery, Exodus 2, when entering the promised land, Deuteronomy 4, when returning from exile, Ezekiel 16, God promises, I will remember my covenant and act. Later we hear in Mary's Magnificat that the child in her womb is the promise of God giving help to the people of faith in remembrance of God's covenant. Luke 2. I recount this covenantal litany in order to frame Resolution 1, which calls upon us, the United Church of Christ, to remember rightly. 1, our commitment to the anti-racism mandate of the gospel. 2, our history of anti-racism work through the antecedent movements such as the American Missionary Association and the Afro-Christian Church. And 3, our covenant with the African American churches within our denomination. Ours is a tradition that was born in 1957 in the midst of civil rights, taking for itself the watchword of Jesus' prayer, that they may all be one. At that time, we remembered we had a heritage of interracial movement called the American Missionary Association, born in 1846, to advocate for the abolition of slavery and to be an agent of change following the Civil War, promoting racial equity by establishing schools and congregations for freed people. The challenge today is also for all members and settings of the United Church of Christ to continue the work of anti-racism and to find ways to bring resources to those African American congregations and institutions with whom we have historic and covenantal ties. Many of our historic African American congregations are struggling, too often in isolation from their brothers and sisters that they hold in covenant. This resolution calls upon the national setting and all the settings of our church to seek resources, partnerships, alliances that will advance the purposes of racial equity for which these African American congregations and institutions were founded. Remembering God's covenant with us to break down every barrier, let us remember our covenant of having founded African American congregations and institutions to work towards racial equity, and the challenge for all congregations and settings of the church to continue our anti-racism tradition. So on behalf of Committee 1, I ask that you vote affirmatively on Resolution 1. See? Perfect.
Do you all see the time clock? You landed that.
Yes.
Woo! All right. Let's see if everyone else can be that great. Yeah, he set the bar high. So this requires a majority vote, and we are now going to entertain discussion. Seeing no one rise to discussion, we will now entertain our vote. You all have your clickers? All right. So if you remember, you'll vote 1 to vote in favor of the resolution, 2 to vote against the resolution, and 3 if you choose to abstain from voting. And the voting starts now. I'm giving you 15 seconds. All right. We needed simple majority. We have got it. Thank you, Reverend Edens. And that resolution passes. So if we work this quickly, folks, we'll be out of here by 9:30 and have all tomorrow and Tuesday off. All right. Our second piece of business tonight is coming from committee number 7. We've got Cheryl Lindsay from the Ohio Conference. Cheryl is coming to speak with us on becoming an immigrant welcoming church. This is a resolution of witness. It will need a 2/3 vote. So I call on Cheryl Lindsay to present the recommended action from this committee. Cheryl.
Thank you. I am Reverend Cheryl Lindsay, Associate Pastor of Mount Zion Church in Cleveland, Ohio, Ohio Conference. The resolution is found on your app under Resolutions as recommended by the Senate Committee number 7. Our committee had a lively and passionate but collegial discussion as we considered what it meant to be the United Church of Christ and how we identify ourselves in solidarity with our neighbor. The primary question centered on whether the resolution was strong and specific enough. Ultimately, we reached consensus that the resolution before us provides a strong statement of identity as an immigrant welcoming denomination. Sensitivity to the reality of our response as an immigrant welcoming church must be as unique and contextual as the communities we seek to embrace. And recognition that our diverse conferences, associations, and most especially congregations are situated in different stages on this journey of becoming. To that end, we have only made a slight modification to the original resolution. Beyond a few grammatical changes, the substantive change is found in the paragraph within lines 16 through 19 with the addition of the words, "and proclaim themselves to be so." This change reflects progression from commitment to a process of education, reflection, and engagement to declaration of identity. On behalf of Committee 7, I move that the 31st General Synod adopts the resolution on becoming an immigrant welcoming church and recommend approval as amended by committee.
Thank you. And does the committee now wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you.
You'll have 3 minutes.
This morning, as I arrived at the convention center, I had a conversation with a homeless gentleman right outside the door. He was expressing concern about the direction of his life, what he should do and where he should go. And after a few moments of conversation, we prayed, and as I turned away, he called out to me and asked me, "Where are you going?" I said, "In the convention center." And he said, "No, miss, where are you going?" And that question has stayed with me all day, and it seems to me that the question of this hour and for this church, as it relates to immigrants, is where are we going? This resolution speaks to our identity, who we are, that we, the United Church of Christ, stand in solidarity with the immigrant. That love of neighbor and a just world for all is not merely new words as part of a slogan, but at the core of who we are and our identity. This resolution intentionally has broad language, first using the term immigrant as an umbrella encompassing all the various classifications and categories of immigrants, allowing us to be as inclusive as possible. Second, the language is broad in order to allow us at all settings of the United Church of Christ to be flexible, adaptive, and responsive to the specific and unique needs of the immigrant communities that are diverse, to whom we relate, and the capacity of our conferences, associations, and congregations to address and respond to their needs. We are unified in who we are, yet not uniform in how we respond. This resolution is presented as a faithful response to the condition of our world at this time. So again, the question, where are we going? And it seems to me that the journey to the cross for Jesus began in earnest when he stood up in a church meeting and proclaimed that the time of deliverance, restoration, and liberty had come for the poor, the captive, the broken, the oppressed, and I dare say, the immigrant. It is my fervent prayer and the recommendation of our committee that in this church meeting, we will take a stand and proclaim with the boldness of Christ that the time has come for the United Church of Christ to become an immigrant welcoming church. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. Again, this will take a 2/3 vote, and we will now address any discussion. I see a speaker at microphone 1. Yes, please state your name and your delegation.
Beth Donaldson, Minnesota Conference. I had the honor and privilege of being the pastor and friend of the Reverend John Gutterman, who spent the last 10 years of his life and ministry working on immigration issues in Minnesota and in our country. And because of that, we in our church and in our conference have had a bright light shined on the issues that immigrants face. Many are gravely inhumane and humiliating, and he established a visitation program with immigrants in detention centers, which also brought to the light the many ways that immigrants struggle and suffer in our community. So I believe this would be an important motion for us to adopt as a General Synod in embodying the commitments we make for a just world for all and the three great loves.
Thank you. Seeing no one at microphones 3 and 4, I'll take the speaker at microphone number 2.
I'm Bryn Smallwood Garcia, the senior pastor at the Congregational Church of Brookfield in Brookfield, Connecticut. I wanted to speak in favor of this motion. My congregation is already a refugee resettlement congregation, and hearing this plan and proposal, I wanted to just say how it inspired me with the opportunity with concrete resources to educate our congregations about the status of all immigrants in the United States of America. The word illegal is thrown around in many circles, and we say in our circles that no human being is illegal. And I think having heard the educational components of this resolution, I learned a lot and would be excited to bring that educational material to my congregation and would encourage you to do the same with yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, not seeing anyone at microphones 3 and 4, I'll go back to microphone number 1, the speaker at microphone 1.
Paul Lance, Michigan Conference. You're mentioning becoming a welcoming, immigrant welcoming community, but I'm reminding us of something that has been in our General Synod records for some time. I'm going to read from General Synod 13 of the United Church of Christ, 1981. adopted a pronouncement on immigration calling all settings of the church to advocate for the rights of immigrants, to aid undocumented immigrants in attaining legal status, aid immigrants in reunification with their families and placement in areas of the country most favorable for their productive participation in society, assist in meeting the social welfare needs of immigrants, and be inclusive of immigrants in existing and new churches. That was 36 years ago. Ronald Reagan had just been elected president. I was at seminary, and this church has always been an immigrant welcoming denomination. What you're saying is we want to now admit it. We want to make sure that everybody knows it, our churches as well as the world.
Thank you. Turning again to the speaker at microphone number 2.
I'm Sue Joyner from the Southwest Conference. I serve First Congregational in Albuquerque, and I'm here because God has called our church to get into the wheelbarrow this week. We have spoken on behalf of undocumented people. We have stood with them, and just 2 days ago, Kadim, a man from Iraq, moved into our basement after showing up for his ICE appointment on Monday, and when hundreds of people in our community stood there in opposition, ICE canceled the appointment. He lives in our basement now, and we need to stand with him. We need to get in the wheelbarrow with all who are living in fear and not knowing what their next steps will be. They are our brothers and sisters. They are ours.
Thank you. And I'll return over to the speaker at microphone 1.
Carrie Parker, board chair of the Wisconsin Conference and the pastor of McFarland United Church of Christ. I was also ordained from the Janesville First Congregational United Church of Christ, which is a new immigrant welcoming congregation. I stand among you today representing one of the conferences submitting this resolution, a conference which just completed a year-long study and discernment process and voted at its June annual meeting to become an immigrant welcoming conference. I offer you the testimony of your siblings from Wisconsin to affirm that congregations diverse in perspectives and politics and resources can find a way to take up this gospel call. For us, the education process had a vital role this year of discussion and discernment in allowing congregations to claim the response most appropriate to their context, so we could all allow each other to enthusiastically offer God and our neighbor the word yes.
Thank you. All right, let's return to microphone 2.
Thank you. I'm Tara Wilkins, pastor of Bridgeport United Church of Christ from the Central Pacific Conference. My father was an immigrant, and what I've noticed is that so often when we talk about immigrants and refugees, and we name them by their status instead of by their humanity. We make them the other. And what we really need is congregations and communities that are willing to journey together with people of all different status. We need people that are willing to acknowledge that they are part of our family. For we know it is on the road to Emmaus that we meet Jesus. And it is on the road to Madison and Sacramento and Houston and Willingboro and Charlotte that we meet the divine. And so what we're asking for in this resolution is that you journey with our brothers and sisters regardless of where they were born. Thank you.
Thank you. And I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Felix Villanueva, Conference Minister for the Southern California Nevada Conference of the United Church of Christ. This past June, our conference passed a sanctuary resolution, so we are a sanctuary conference. Churches in our conference have hosted, fought for, defended, and advocated for immigrants through our history. I was lucky enough to be born in Puerto Rico, so I didn't have to migrate to the United States. I just got on a plane, I came here. And we know the plight of our brothers and sisters who are immigrants. And we know the mandate of our scriptures to welcome the stranger among us. So I want to encourage you to vote yes to this important resolution.
Thank you. And I return again to the speaker at microphone 2.
Yes, I'm Mark Stewart, the Conference Minister for Montana Northern Wyoming Conference, United Church of Christ. Just last week, we heard of the death of one of our global ministers from Missoula, Montana, University United Church of Christ, Scott Nicholson. Scott Nicholson worked for HEPAC, Home for Peace and Community in Nogales, Mexico. He taught many of us throughout the United Church of Christ of what it means to be an immigrant and what it means to be a welcoming church and people of immigrants. So in honor of Scott, we are remembering Scott's good work, and in our delegation appeal for the passing of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers at microphones, are you ready for the vote? Yes. All right. Remember that pressing 1 will indicate that you are in favor of the motion. Pressing 2 means you are against the motion. Pressing 3 means you are abstaining. I'm giving you 15 seconds, and voting starts now. Very good. Needing a 2/3 vote, it has passed. Thank you so much for your work. Our third piece of business tonight is going to have a little special something for us. One of the highlights of this synod is a renewed emphasis on our youth program and the ways in which our young people have been much more intentionally engaged with the work of General Synod. Close to 200 youth visitors, delegates, and adult chaperones have participated in our Youth at Synod program, ably planned and led by the Reverend Barbara Kirshner Daniel. There we go, we got a shout out. They have not only participated in the youth programming, but they have also attended educational intensives, committee meetings, hearings, and all of our plenaries. So while they have been involved in all aspects of our time together and studied all of the business to come before Synod, they chose to pay particular attention to 3 resolutions. One of them is the piece of business which we will currently entertain before this body. So the General Synod Program and Planning Committee made the decision to allow our young people to take a few minutes to present a youth perspective on this issue as part of our deliberations. At the time that we start our deliberations then, I would ask that without objection, I would request that the General Synod suspend our standing rule to allow the body to hear a 3-minute presentation from our youth at Synod as we prepare to debate and take action upon that resolution. And we will hear 3 of them throughout our business these next couple of days. So hearing no objections, I declare that the body has unanimously and properly set aside the standing rule to allow our youth to speak. And for this purpose, we are allowing them to speak from the yellow microphone, and I will call on you in a moment. Yes? Isn't this great the youth are getting this involved in our synod proceedings? So the current piece of business before us comes from committee number 2, and Reverend Leslie Schenk has been their committee leader. The committee title of this business is a call for the United Church of Christ to advocate for the rights of children living under Israeli military occupation. Because this is a resolution of witness, it will require a 2/3 vote. And so now I call upon Leslie Schenk to present the recommended actions from committee number 2. Leslie?
Hello, I'm Leslie Schenk, delegate of the Wisconsin Conference, pastor of Plymouth Congregational UCC in Madison, and chair of committee number 2, which, as Madam Moderator said, deliberated on the resolution, a call for the United Church of Christ to advocate for the rights of children living under Israeli military occupation. If you look at resolutions as recommended by the Synod committees in your app, it is the second one listed. It was a pleasure to work with this committee and those who attended our meetings as visitors. We had spirited and spirit-filled discussions that were thoughtful and respectful. I want to give a special shout out and thank you on behalf of the committee to the youth who attended our discussions and were deeply engaged in this issue. The future of our church is indeed in great hands. The result of our deliberation was to make 3 amendments to the resolution, which we believe do not change the substance of the resolution, but add clarification and focus. As you will see on your app on line 11, after the phrase detained children, we added the parenthetical defined as persons under 18 years old. While the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children referenced in the resolution defines what is meant by children, and this definition is generally and widely used, the committee felt that this parenthetical added helpful clarity. On line 48, the committee deleted the phrase U.S. and added local, national to make explicit that local partnerships are a key element to the transformation needed and called for in the resolution. The third change was to insert the section lines 52 to 54, encourages respectful dialogue among people of all faiths about this issue that has impacted generations. The committee wanted the resolution to explicitly reflect the multi-generational impact of 50 years of occupation, as well as to explicitly encourage further ecumenical and interfaith dialogue that is oftentimes difficult given the complexity of the larger issue. On behalf of Committee Number 2, I move that the 31st General Synod adopts the resolution on a call for the United Church of Christ to advocate for the rights of children living under Israeli military occupation and recommend approval as amended by committee.
Thank you. And would the committee wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, we would. Thank you.
Please.
While the committee spent some time debating various amendments to the resolution, it was clear from early on in our deliberations that some form of this resolution would be recommended for approval by General Synod here today. As one young person simply but quite eloquently said during our discussion, "It seems like this should have been done a long time ago. Why hasn't it happened yet?" There are several aspects of the treatment of Palestinian children living under occupation that resonated with the committee. One was the fact that there are 2 legal systems applied to children living in the occupied territories. Israeli children living in the territories are subject to Israeli law, democratically determined, whose focus is education and rehabilitation. Palestinian children living in the same areas are subject to Israeli military law, which denies basic and fundamental rights and allows children to be subject to such practices as physical and verbal abuse, blindfolds and restraints, solitary confinement, and coerced confessions, among others. These 2 legal systems treat children of the same age committing the same infractions quite differently. The second issue that resonated with the committee was the fact that the occupation has lasted for 50 years, with generations of Palestinian children growing up under military occupation and laws that treat them differently than their neighbors and even their friends. While the concern for Israeli security and safety was recognized and discussed, so was the sense that no one can truly be secure or safe when those most vulnerable are not secure or safe. Can there ever be peace without justice? To quote a very wise man. As we have heard and celebrated here at Synod, the UCC's vision of a just world for all calls for us to focus on the love of children, the love of neighbor, and the love of creation. This resolution that calls for advocacy for children in the occupied territories of Palestine is a great vehicle for us to witness to two of these loves, the love of children and the love of neighbor, in the expansive understanding of neighbor we embrace here in the UCC. For these reasons, among others, this committee strongly and unanimously recommends that you adopt this resolution as amended, witnessing to our call to advocate for the human rights of children in Palestine.
Thank you, Leslie. And we will first go to microphone 5 and hear what our youth have to say. You will have 3 minutes. Yes.
Hello, I'm Alex Cumber. This is Ben Mercier and Lucy Adkins. We are here with you today to talk about the Israel-Palestine issue. Now, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Imagine yourself peacefully sleeping when you hear a knock on your door. Israeli soldiers march into your house demanding to see everyone's IDs. They hoist your child up and bind their hands painfully behind their back, as well as blindfolding them. Your child is then painfully towed away into a truck as you watch helplessly, having no idea where the soldiers are taking them or why. Open your eyes. Palestinian children go through this every day. Any child under 18 can be subjected to arrest. When they are interrogated, the children will have no lawyer or parent. To coerce a confession out of these kids, they will make them sit in painful positions for long amounts of time, beat them physically and mentally, and will put them in solitary confinement for up to 13 days. When the children confess, they will be taken to court with a lawyer, but because they have confessed, 99% of them will go to jail. I go to bed knowing I am safe, knowing I am protected. These children are not so fortunate.
Speaking of fortune, the monetary aid that the U.S. provides to Israel is staggeringly high, almost $4 billion. Palestine, on the other hand, is only given $400 million. How in the world is this considered a fair distribution? How can we be paying an incredibly high amount of tax dollars to a country that values the torturous interrogation of children? Now, the troubling thing is that the UN will not accept Palestine into its circle of votes and only places Palestine on the sidelines without very much of a say. The key word in United Nations is united. In unity, well, we believe, it is the solution to this conflict between Israel and Palestine. Without unity, we crumble. Without communication, war breaks. Without togetherness, the rights that should be endowed to children cannot be instated and enforced.
All humans should be allowed human rights. It doesn't and shouldn't matter what your sex, nationality, religion, language, ethnic origin, or anything else is. But most Palestinian children do not know their rights, and if they do know, it usually doesn't help. Fear controls many things. They are being taken out of their homes and are tortured and forced to tell the Israeli military everything. And that is who's doing this to these kids. The Israeli military are taking children under 18 to interrogate them and convict them of a crime they either did or did not commit. Thank you.
Thank you. I got a few goosebumps from that. So now we're opening the floor to discussion, and I will recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Thank you so much. I am Reverend Catherine Alder from the Central Pacific Conference. Those kids just said about 3/4 of what I was going to say. Jesus loves children. We love children. This resolution is about the breath of God in Palestinian children. This is against, what's happening to them is against international law, but greater than that, it is against the law of love. We are called to be water protectors, but we're also called to be hope protectors. This is to give hope to Palestinian families and children. Vote yes. Which side are we on? Which side are we on? We are on the side of children.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
My name is Marisa Brown Ludwig, and I am a delegate from Massachusetts. In my local work, I serve in ecumenical and interfaith task forces, both for the state, our conference, Massachusetts Conference, and also in my local area. In my work, I do ministry and mission side by side with multi-narrative witness, with Jews and Muslims and Christians and other faiths, Baha'i and Buddhist, and that's why I'm here. I share the heartbreak of everyone who has spoken so far, and there are voices missing from this debate today. It is targeting only the Israeli side of a terrible atrocity, this tragedy in the Middle East. And those are not the only sides. And I have friends and colleagues who are American Jews and Israelis who are deeply pained and isolated and marginalized by initiatives like this. They only read, I can't finish. You're not allowing me to finish.
Thank you. I must remind the floor that we've asked, I don't think we've reminded you this synod, not to clap, because we know that there are oftentimes dissenting opinions, so please hold your applause. Thank you. I now turn to the speaker at microphone number 2.
I am the Reverend Kim Whistler Vasco, Associate Minister of First Congregational of Downers Grove, a delegate from the Illinois Conference of the United Church of Christ. The Gospel of Matthew asks us, is there anyone among you? If your child asks for bread, we'll give a stone? Or if the child asks for a fish, we'll give a snake? And the prophet Isaiah from our Hebrew text tells us, the wolf shall live with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. I share with you the words of Mira Rizak, the executive director of the YWCA of Palestine, one of our global ecumenical partners. She says, I call on all churches and members of the church who stand for justice and believe that justice is the only road to peace. To support this resolution, it is not justice to have children live in constant fear of being detained or imprisoned.
Thank you. Seeing no one at 3 and 4, I return to microphone 1.
Hi there, Dave Yoshida from Connecticut Conference. The concern has been raised about the potential for this resolution to cause friction between our denomination and our faith partners. I'm reminded of a time when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. found himself in a similar position, and in writing his letter from a Birmingham jail, called us to think carefully about the differences between causes and effects. The underlying cause for this resolution, the unjust treatment of children as state enemies, must not be silenced out of concern for the possible effects of the embarrassment that highlighting injustice often engenders. The pain of broken relationships is real, but it is a false binary to think of this as a choice between interfaith relationships and the human dignity of Palestinian children. This is a matter of discerning the voice of God who is still speaking directly to our conscience. In fact, standing as a witness to injustice is a time-honored posture of interfaith relationship, calling our partners to make a similar stand. Furthermore, we are encouraged by the long list of partners who in fact support this resolution, including the American Friends Service Committee, the Jewish Voices for Peace, the Alliance of Baptists, Episcopal Peace Fellowship, and...
Thank you very much. And seeing no one at 3 and 4, I will return to the speaker at number 2.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Shepard, and I'm with the Florida delegation, and I worship at First United Church in Tampa, Florida. The matter of this resolution hits home for me in a very real way. When a 16-year-old Palestinian American boy from my current hometown, Tampa, Florida, was beaten unconscious, and detained by Israeli police. His name is Tarek. He was never charged. This took place in occupied East Jerusalem. To this day, his family has received no answers to their call for justice. Two relatives of Tarek's will join us tomorrow at booth 605 to tell his story. Sadly, his story is one of many. I support this resolution. Delegates, let's do justice. Join me and vote yes.
Thank you. I now turn to the speaker at microphone number 3.
Hello, my name is Amelia, and I'm from the Massachusetts Conference.
Can you state your full name, please?
Amelia Nugent from the Massachusetts Conference.
Thank you.
And I know I stand before you knowing that this resolution will pass. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for us to bear witness to the rights of children. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. But I do want to bring to the attention of this body that some of the information in this, cited in this document is dated, and that Israel has made progress or has tried to make progress on this issue, and that the UN and UNICEF has recognized some of that. So I think that we need to make sure when we do something like this that we have updated information. It's best practices. It helps us better represent ourselves in the world. And so I just want to bring that to the attention of this body. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have time for one last speaker, and I'm going to recognize the speaker at microphone 1.
I'm the Reverend Allie Perry, Shalom United Church of Christ, Connecticut Conference. Several times I've been a guest in the home of Palestinian families in the West Bank. I've met their children. I know them by name. I've heard and am haunted by stories about the abuse that they have suffered at the hands of the Israeli military. As the civil rights activist Vincent Harding has said, once you know, you owe. I now owe it to my Palestinian friends to speak out against Israel's pervasive and escalating abuse of human rights. We, as the United Church of Christ, owe it to our Palestinian mission partners to insist that Israel conform to international juvenile justice standards. And we owe it to ourselves because when our government pays $3.8 billion a year to support Israel's military occupation, we are responsible. I once thought this issue was complicated. It is not. This is legal and a moral issue that demands, like the stones crying out, that we raise our voices in defense of Palestinian children.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of our time for debate. We now have the motion upon the floor. This will take a 2/3 vote because it is a resolution of witness. So please find your clickers. Remember that voting number 1 votes for the motion. Number 2 votes against the motion. And number 3? Oh, we have someone at 5? Okay. Yes, speaker number 5.
Good evening, Reverend Bill Wildman, Massachusetts Conference. And this is a question, given that there's been some question raised about validity, datedness of the information in the resolution. Would it be appropriate to consider tabling it to one of the later plenary sessions so that facts can be double-checked to make sure that everything in the resolution is up to date and accurate? I think that might reduce some of the angst and some of the difficulty around it.
If you're suggesting a motion to table, you need to go to microphone 6. You need to return to microphone number 6 to make that motion.
Where is that?
Right behind you.
Hi, I'm still Bill. And I'm going to move that we table to a later plenary session during Synod the current resolution for a fact review.
Handle 5 now. Do we have a second? Now go to 5? All right, thank you. Speaker at microphone number 5.
Casey Ream, Northern California, Nevada Conference. Madam Moderator, I move that we call to question this resolution.
We can't do that at this point as we have a motion on the table already. Thank you. Okay. So the speaker at microphone number 6. Bill?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
That's all right. We need that motion written down and given to the floor parliamentarian.
No problemo.
Does Libby have a microphone? Libby doesn't have a microphone, does she? Okay. Can I go ahead and take the motion then? Okay. So we're going to now vote on the motion to table. Yes, microphone 5.
Point of order. We heard the second from the floor, but I was under the impression that that individual needed to come to the mic and give a name for a second. Is that correct?
That's fine. Someone who seconded that motion, if you'll come to the floor so we can record that. Microphone 6.
Yes, I'd like to ask for discussion, please.
There's no discussion. There's no debate on this particular motion to table. So we are now going to vote. Was there a second? All right, please step to a microphone, microphone number 6.
My name is Walter Zebel. I am delegate of the Indiana-Kentucky Conference. I would like to put my name down as seconding the motion to table.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to table this resolution. So the motion of the text of the motion reads, I move that the motion be postponed to the final plenary session to allow for a fact review. That is the motion you are voting on. It has been moved and seconded. We will have no discussion. So now, if you'll please find your clickers. Vote for number 1, in favor of tabling the motion. In number 2, against tabling this resolution, and number 3 would be to abstain. And the voting starts now. We needed a simple majority, so we have voted down the motion to table this resolution until the final plenary. So now we are back to the original motion on the floor, and we are ready to vote. Voting number 1 means you affirm you are agreeing with the resolution. Number 2 means you are disapproving the resolution. And number 3 means you are abstaining. You have 15 seconds and it starts now. Please refrain. Please refrain. The motion passes at 79%. Thank you, Committee 7. Committee 2? I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you, Committee 2. We're now going to change up and move on to a different piece of business that we have this evening. I would call upon the Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee of the Board of Directors, Mr. Robert Freeberg, and the Chief Financial Officer of the United Church of Christ, Mr. Stephen Jones, for the budget presentation. Following this presentation, Mr. Freeberg will move the level of national basic support for the next 2 budget years and then call for another vote directing the board to set the allocation. Gentlemen.
Good evening. First, a word of thanks is in order to Executive Minister Jim Moose, who served as acting Chief Financial Officer for nearly a year until we were able to find and hire Mr. Jones. Not only did Jim run Wider Church Ministries and was the co-executive of Global Ministries during that year, he also very ably ran our finance department and helped in the search for a new Chief Financial Officer. Jim, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. With the hiring of Steve Jones, we have found a person who seeks a new and vigorous approach to the management of our finances and adherence to best practices and a steady and long-term stewardship of our finances. He is experienced, informed, and enthusiastic, and is about to make his maiden voyage before the General Synod. Steve?
Thank you. Didn't have to pay Bob too much to make the nice comments, but thank you. Good evening. About a year ago, I was searching for an opportunity to join an organization and work with the leadership team to take that organization to the next level. After a series of interviews and discussions, I found that opportunity and accepted my position as Chief Financial Officer of the United Church of Christ. This year has been filled with learning about the national setting, the infrastructure of the church, both short and long-term challenges of the organization, as well as identifying opportunities for improvement. Throughout last year, I discovered that in many ways the United Church of Christ is unique, but in other ways very similar to other nonprofits. Many of these organizations face the same challenges, including declining revenue, strong competition for donor funds, identifying funds for new initiatives, and last but not least, maintaining a balanced budget. But where many see challenges, the leadership team at the national setting sees opportunities. Collectively, we believe the opportunity exists to challenge existing practices, initiate best practices, and look for ways to put the United Church of Christ in a position of strength. One such opportunity exists with technology. A great example of our financial services team using technology to improve efficiency, the processing and reporting of business travel and expense. Over the course of the last year, the financial services team reviewed, selected, and implemented industry-leading travel and expense management software to automate this process. The new software solution, named Concur, will allow employees to prepare, submit, and approve expense reports from anywhere in the world with their electronic device. Also, financial services will no longer be required to copy 100 credit card statements a month, track paper receipts, or record numerous journal entries. Integration of technology into our routine processes like this will provide more time for our team to focus on other priorities. In addition to technology, we've spent the year looking at other opportunities to improve our processes or implement best practices, such as benchmarking our salaries and benefits against other organizations to ensure these expenses are in line with the market rates. Other best practices identified by the national setting include analyzing our asset allocation for our endowment funds to strengthen the return of our largest asset. Another example, developing a competitive bid process for any large expenses to ensure the national setting pays competitive rates for our goods and services. Last but not least, looking for ways to integrate our various software systems by having them feed data electronically to our general ledger system, thereby avoiding manual entry by our employees. Implementing best practices is essential as we work through these challenging times. As you will see in a few minutes, the national setting is working hard to stay in front of these challenges. One such challenge, declining revenues. Over the last 5 years, the operating revenue for the national setting has declined $1.6 million, putting pressure on the organization to run a balanced budget. Leadership and the employees responded by closely managing the expenses, which allow the national setting to operate at a surplus the last 2 years. Before we look at the numbers, let's take a few minutes and look at some decisions by the Board of Directors over the last 2 years. In March 2016, the United Church of Christ Board approved a combined statement of investment policy for the national setting. The policy included guidance on committee structure and responsibilities, risk tolerance, long-term diversification, acceptable ranges of investments by asset class, and spending policy. Other key language included guidance in evaluating investment managers. One other significant section was the spending policy. The board included language instructing management to reduce the current spending rate from 5% to 4% by 2019. This move to lower the spending rate is consistent with many nonprofits, including colleges and community foundations. Many have moved to 4.5% in part due to lower returns over the last 10 years. The United Church of Christ is using 4.75% in their 2017 budget. As we discuss the new combined investment policy and spending rates, it is important to note that there have been significant differences between the policy and actual draws each year. Actual draw rates have been below our policy. The reason? From a financial perspective, a surplus allows us to take a lower draw from our endowment. A lower draw allows us to keep those assets invested and generate additional returns in the out years. In both 2015 and 2016, the actual draw rate was well below the spending rate in our policy, 4.23 and 4.39% respectively. This is very positive. It shows the national setting is exercising good judgment and managing our endowed funds while achieving a balanced budget. In addition, a task force on exclusionary screens comprised of members from the UCCB Investment and Endowment Committee, Collegium, United Church Fund's Board of Directors, and UCC Financial Services staff formally concluded their work in March 2017 by recommending language for these screens to be included in the combined statement of investment policy. The primary rationale was to better align our policy with the United Church of Christ's current teachings and values. The updated language is based on a 4-tier approach. Potential investments are reviewed in accordance with each tier, and assuming the investment makes it through all 4 tiers, it would be considered an acceptable investment. The 4 tiers are screened by industry. Number 2, excluding companies that have negative performance, such as disregard for worker safety, human rights abuses. Number 3, shareholder engagement. And number 4, impact or intentional investment to achieve justice concerns that are not easily addressed in tiers 1 through 3. These changes were presented by the task force to the Investment and Endowment Committee at the March meeting and approved by the committee. Although we have done a good job managing the endowment, we must continue to research and talk with market experts to identify and implement best practices. One of these best practices includes regularly reviewing and adjusting the asset allocation of our endowment as a way to strengthen our returns in the market. If you're not familiar with the term asset allocation, it is an investment strategy that aims to balance the risk and rewards by allocating a portfolio's assets according to an organization's goals and risk tolerance. That's a real mouthful. Let me say that one more time. Asset allocation is an investment strategy that aims to balance risk and reward by allocating a portfolio's assets according to an organization's goals and risk tolerance. The United Church of Christ currently uses an asset allocation with some limitations. I am suggesting we review on a more regular basis and adjust the changes in the market to help with our returns in the market. Some of the other best practices include reviewing and analyzing manager fees, regular meetings with managers, and benchmarking, investment returns against manager performance. The endowment is our largest asset. In this period of declining revenues, we have an opportunity to strengthen and increase returns, which helps support the mission and other priorities of the United Church of Christ. Several other financial-related committees of the board have been busy since the last Synod. The Audit Committee reviewed and approved the 2015 and 2016 audited financial statements and completed their due diligence as it relates to the conflict of interest and whistleblower policies. In addition, the committee developed a timeline in March 2016 to solicit proposals from accounting firms for our annual audit. A list of 10 firms was compiled through a joint effort between the Audit Committee and Financial Services team. Firms selected for the list were known to have experience in the nonprofit sector and fund accounting. After narrowing the list to 3 firms, the Audit Committee interviewed all the firms. The committee discussed the merits of each firm, including fees, hours, and nonprofit experience in terms of staffing and clients. The 3 candidates were narrowed down to 2, Plant Moran and RSM. Following further discussions with both firms, the Audit Committee voted to select RSM as the UCCB auditors for the years 2016 through 2018, given their understanding of the complexity of the engagement and depth of industry knowledge and expertise. Now, let's talk briefly about our financial performance the last couple of years. Now, I thought it was a good example because of Synod. Tracy Blackman talked about Niagara Falls on Friday. My example is a little smaller than that. But let's take the glass as half empty, half full. We all know the story that as the glass is half full, the optimist sees that as half full. The pessimist sees it as half empty. Well, myself, like many other accountants, are just relieved that the glass of water is balanced. All the numbers we are going to discuss are combined, meaning they include all the ministries and the administrative units. As I previously mentioned, we have continued to see declining revenues over the past several years. 2015 was no exception. In 2015, we had $22.3 million budgeted for all revenue sources. Actual came in at $21.8 million, or $500,000 below budget. OCWM was short by about $175,000, and the special offerings, One Great Hour of Sharing and Neighbors in Need, were short about $300,000 below budget. To offset the revenue shortfall, the national setting managed their operating expenses very well and came in at $1.7 million below budget. Savings came from all areas, including personnel, travel, administration, and programs. The combination of the shortfall in revenue and cost savings created a surplus of $1.2 million for the year. This surplus came at a critical time. In 2013, the national setting realized a $2 million deficit. This surplus helped replenish a portion of the national setting's operating capital that was lost in that deficit. Calendar year 2016 looked very similar to 2015. A total of $22.4 million was budgeted for all revenue sources. Actual came in at $21.9 million, or $512,000 below budget. OCWM was short by $167,000, and the special offerings, One Great Hour of Sharing and Neighbors in Need, were about $317,000 below budget. Once again, to offset the shortfall in revenue, the national setting managed their expenses and came in $1.4 million below their expense budget. The end result of the variances, a $985,000 surplus for 2016. Let me emphasize again, these surpluses were very helpful in replacing the operating capital that had been lost with the large deficit in 2013. In addition to providing operating capital, surpluses can help provide capital for future years in case the national setting would incur another deficit or to help fund new initiatives by the national setting or the church. As I mentioned earlier, the United Church of Christ, along with many other nonprofits, are facing issues from declining revenues. One of our principal revenue streams, our church's wider mission, which consists of basic support and special offerings, have seen significant and steady decline over the last 5 years. In 2011, OCWM totaled $7.4 million. In 2016, the total had declined to $5.6 million, a 24% decline over that period. In 2014, these offerings accounted for 43% of the revenues that supported the work of the Office of General Minister and President, as well as the other ministries. In 2016, they accounted for 39%. At this General Synod, delegates will be asked to approve a national basic support base of $4.95 million and $4.63 million in 2018 and 2019, which will impact the budgets of the United Church of Christ Board and the pension boards. These figures represent a decrease of $345,000 and $322,000 for 2018 and 19, respectively, from the $5.3 million budget in 2017. The graph being shown provides a 5-year history of basic and special support receipts. The first bar in green represents national basic support receipts that support the budgets of the Office of General Minister and President and other ministries. OCWM special support is comprised of 4 special offerings, including 1 great hour of sharing, neighbors in need, strengthen the church, and Christmas offering. During the last 2 years, OGHS, or 1 great hour of sharing, has decreased 5%. Neighbors in need and strengthen the church both increased 9% and 7%, while the Christmas offering stayed basically flat. As we face the challenges of declining revenue, the national setting continues to identify new and best practices to strengthen our organization. As the Chief Financial Officer, it is important to me to note that a resolution will be presented to General Synod that provides a diverse approach to generosity in the United Church of Christ that will help address the challenges and opportunities facing the church today. The new giving proposal calls us into a new direction that is consistent with financial and philanthropic norms, expectations, and best practices from both an institutional perspective and that of donors. Please know that it has been thoroughly developed with an eye toward holding and balance the financial needs, challenges, and opportunities of each of the settings, congregations, conferences, and national office. Before I close, on behalf of the staff and partners of the national setting, we would like to say thank you. Thank you for all your generosity, both in terms of your time and financial commitment. Your commitment and gifts to the United Church of Christ provides support for mission work throughout the world, support for local churches, and social justice issues, not to mention many other mission-critical programs, too numerous to name. Thank you again for all you do for the United Church of Christ. So in conclusion, we've covered a lot of topics and numbers in a very short period of time. It might be helpful just to summarize my presentation into 5 key points. Number 1, many challenges exist for the church in today's world. The leadership team at the national setting chooses to see these as opportunities. One such opportunity exists with technology. We continue to look for new ways to use technology in communication with our constituents, improving our internal processes, and attracting new members. Number 2, the national setting is working to implement best practices within our organization. Best practices help build a strong workplace, maintain a higher quality within the organization, and is a key component of this is best practices benchmarking that can be used to assess progress. Number 3, in this period of declining revenues, we continue to look for ways to strengthen our returns on our endowment while respecting the parameters established by the board. This is critical if we are to maintain current programs and find ways to fund new initiatives. Number 4, the national setting continues to work hard as a good steward for the United Church of Christ's financial resources. Practices like comprehensive review of expenses to identify savings have been done in the last year. These savings are then used to offset shortfalls in revenue and redirect to different programs or other priorities within the organization. And number 5, thank you for your generosity. We recognize the national setting is blessed to have your support, and that enables us to support all the programs and priorities of the church. So thank you for your time, and God bless.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Freeberg, have you a motion to bring?
Madam Moderator, I do. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I move that the General Synod adopt the National Basic Support Allocation base of $4.95 million and $4.63 million for the budget years 2018 and 2019.
Thank you. The motion comes from the Board of Directors and needs no second. Mr. Freeberg, would you like to speak to this?
Very briefly, this is, as you heard from Steve, our estimate of what resources are going to be available for those 2 years from our basic support. And this is what the board has, with the assistance of our staff, of course, have come to recognize as the appropriate action to take, and I would encourage your support of this motion.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any questions? I recognize the speaker at microphone number 5.
Hi, Meredith Jackson, Missouri Mid-South Conference. Where in the materials was the budget that we're voting on? Where is what we were supposed to look at in advance? I have the financial report, but I do not see a budget.
Well, the board approves the budget.
So where are the materials for the delegates to look at and have copies of before we vote?
There's material on the website.
We have supplemental financial information, which has the information from the past years. I do not see a budget. Am I missing it? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see it either, but it must be here somewhere.
Senate does not vote on the budget. Senate votes on the allocation base. So the motion has come from the Board of Directors and needs no second. Thank you, Bob. Are there any further questions? So seeing no one moving to a microphone, I assume you're ready to vote. It has been moved that the General Synod adopt a national basic support allocation base of, could you repeat those numbers again, Bob?
Yes, $4.95 million and $4.63 million for 18 and 19 respectively.
4.95 million and 4.63 million
Correct.
for the budget years 2018 and 2019 respectively.
That's correct.
Thank you. So please pick up your clickers, and if you approve this motion, please vote number 1. Number 2, if you disapprove, and number 3, if you abstain. The voting starts now. 15 seconds, yes. And the voting passes. This needed a simple majority. We are at 69%. The resolution the motion passes. Mr. Freeberg, I believe you have another action.
On behalf of the Board of Directors, I move that the General Synod delegate the determination of the percentage allocation for OCWM National Basic Support for the 2018-2019 biennium to the Board of Directors.
Thank you. This action also comes from the Board of Directors, so a second is not needed. Would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, Madam Moderator. The recommended allocation percentage to each of the ministries is reviewed by the Board's Budget and Finance Committee, and that is then taken to the UCC Board for approval. In the past several years, certain grants and expenses will be taken off the top before the percentage allocations are finalized. As a result, the final numbers are best determined by the board in this particular board setting. And I think you realize that that is a flexible situation that we can't pin down today or what we'll be doing with in a couple of years. If there are any questions, I'll answer them as well as I did the last one.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Seeing no one moving to all right. Is it point of order? Question, yes. Please go to microphone 5. Right in back of you. No, you're right there.
Okay. Good evening. Derek McCullers, Delegate for Ministers, Racial, Social, Economic Justice. And I wanted to ask, is the quorum bodies, both quorum as a collective and the individual groups included in any of this OCW allocation? And if not, where would they be included in the monetary expenditures approved for the next biennium? That's my question.
That's a good question, and I can't answer that one either. Here's somebody that knows.
Well, as best I can. So to answer your question, the quorum grants are part of our budgets that we do develop every year. So while it's not necessarily part of the OCM distribution or allocation, it is in our budget as a line item for quorum grants as part of the expense budget, okay?
Thank you. Thank you both. And yes, I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Reverend Sharissa Simpson Rice from Ohio Conference. I'm astounded that we are supposed to be approving or disapproving something that no one gives numbers to. I could never go to a congregational meeting with no budget and say, hey, approve it. Unbelievable.
Thank you. Seeing no one else moving to a microphone, are you ready for the question? Please pick up your clickers. If you vote 1 to approve, number 2 against the motion, number 3 to abstain. And the voting starts now. Requires a simple majority. The motion has passed. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your vigilance in this work. Okay. We've been at it for a good deal of time now, and so in a moment, we're going to take a 5-minute stretch break in place. Please don't leave the room. And our Synod Music Director, Tom Scott, will give us something to lift our spirits. But please don't leave just yet, because before that moment, I want to just offer you a little shout out to the West, the Western region, and particularly my Rocky Mountain Conference. And to that end, I have a joke for you. Now, my daughter and future son-in-law tell me this won't land, so you can tell me if it did or didn't later. So, a 3-legged dog walks into a saloon in the Old West, and he sidles up to the bar and growls, "I'm looking for the man who shot my paw." Please stand and enjoy the music.
Who knows the Snoopy dance?
All right. You ready to come back to order? No, I hear that. Let's come back to order. We've got some important business yet to attend to tonight. So if you would please sit down in the hall. All right. Okay, thank you. All right. I have a couple of points of order. Number one, if you're heading toward microphone 5, we would ask, either 5 or 6, we would ask you to check in at the parliamentarians table where Libby Tigner is. Libby, you want to give a little wave? There we go. So either 5 or 6, if you will check in with Libby before you move to that microphone. And I will now recognize the speaker at microphone 5.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Granados. I am part of the New York delegation. I'm calling a point of privilege. I think that's it. The last thing that we just voted on, I couldn't see the screen, and you moved too quickly from what was written to voting, and I read kind of slow, and I know that we care very deeply about disabilities, and I have dyslexia, and you moved way too fast. And even though you can't see my disability, it's not visible like others. I think we need to make sure to keep in mind that we pause enough after reading the resolution before going into voting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure others appreciate it too. So I want to make a clarification about what we just did with our budget numbers. You have the option or the opportunity in the next couple of days to vote for your board of directors. The board of directors that you vote on and you put trust in are the ones who look at a line item budget. What you have just passed is the allocation of money toward that line item budget, but the General Synod itself does not review and pass the line item budget. So I think that hopefully that helps clear up what we had just moved through. So you approved the allocation of the big dollars to fund that budget at the the numbers that we already talked about. That's what you approved. General Synod does not approve an item by item, line item budget. That's what your board of directors does on your behalf. And in the next couple of days, you have the opportunity to elect your board of directors for the next coming biennium. Hope that makes it more clear. All right, so moving on to an exciting piece of business now. Yesterday morning, we received the nomination of the Reverend Tracy Blackman as Executive Minister of Justice and Witness Ministries of the United Church of Christ. And tonight we have the opportunity to vote on that nomination. The nomination reads as follows. On March 9th, 2017, the United Church of Christ Board of Directors, sitting as the Justice and Witness Ministries Board of Directors, renominated for election by the 31st General Synod the selection of its search committee, the Reverend Tracy Blackman of the Missouri Mid-South Conference, for a 4-year term as Executive Minister of Justice and Witness Ministries of the United Church of Christ, and submits its nomination for consideration by delegates to the 31st General Synod, meeting June 30th through July 4th, 2017 in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, as this is coming from the Board of Directors, it needs no second, so we will now entertain debate. Seeing no one moving toward a microphone, we will now vote. All in favor of the motion, please vote 1. All opposed to the motion, please vote 2. And any abstentions, vote 3. The voting opens now. Tracy Blackman, you are now our new executive minister. Woo! Would you please join us on the stage? And John and Jim, would you please join her as well?
I'm getting in on this one.
Tracy, would you like to say just 1 minute of short words to express something to your fans? Fans.
This morning in the Meet the Candidates section, I opened by sharing with those present that I spent this morning in prayer. And I did something that I rarely do. I asked God to grant me favor in this election. And I heard the Spirit say, I am with you all, and that is enough. The people must choose their own leader from among them. And if they don't choose, you'll never be able to lead. I thank you for this privilege and this opportunity. And my promise to you is I will do everything I can to never make you sorry that you chose me. Thank you.
What an amazing team. Thank you. We now return to our business block, and the piece of business we will now undertake is one of the pieces of the bylaws. At this General Synod, we will be considering a number of proposed changes to the Constitution and bylaws of the United Church of Christ. During this evening's plenary, we will be considering those amendments related to full communion with the United Church of Canada, voted on at the last General Synod. Here to present the amendments is Mr. Jeff Brace, Chair of the Governance Committee of the United Church of Christ Board of Directors. He is a phenomenal servant to this denomination. Mr. Brace.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. At this time, I move the adoption of the proposed amendments to the United Church of Christ Constitution and bylaws related to the full communion agreement with the United Church of Canada. These changes are found in the document entitled UC Canada Proposed Amendments, which was provided pursuant to Article 13 of the United Church of Christ Constitution via the General Synod website.
The motion comes from a committee and does not require a second. Mr. Brace, would you like to speak further to the motion?
I would, thank you. At General Synod 30 in 2015, the United Church of Christ General Synod voted to enter into full communion with the United Church of Canada. This agreement recognizes the sacraments and ordination of ministers, allowing them to be called by congregations of either denomination. The United Church of Christ already has a full communion with the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. The proposed amendments reflect a very similar full communion with the United Church of Canada. The full communion between the United Church of Christ and the United Church of Canada was formalized in October of 2015. 1 hour after the UCC board concluded its meeting, more than 24 people, members of the board, staff, and national officers, boarded a bus in Cleveland to travel to Canada, where that agreement was finalized. Since that time, the UCC's ecumenical officer, Karen Georgia Thompson, the UCC's general counsel, Heather Kimmel, officers of the church, board leadership, and others have engaged in a process to bring the amendments brought before you this evening. The UCC Board of Directors authorized the language for consideration at General Synod 31 in March of 2017. The United Church of Canada will also engage in a process to amend its governing documents. The directive of General Synod 30, the UCC's commitment to ecumenical work, and Jesus' prayer that they may all be one form the UCC Board's recommendation to General Synod 31 that these amendments be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. The motion before the House requires a 2/3 vote, and there will be no amendments made to this motion because bylaws require a certain notification period of time. So we will now entertain discussion. Seeing no one moving toward a microphone, are you now ready to vote? If you are voting in favor of adoption of the proposed changes to the Constitution and bylaws, please press 1. If you are opposed to the adoption of the proposed changes to the Constitution and bylaws, please press 2. And if you are abstaining, please press 3. Voting opens now. And you have 15 seconds. We got a quirk in the system. Let's re-vote again, friends. So we get the vote back up on the screen. And again, 1 is approving the measure, 2 is opposing, and 3 is abstaining. Please vote now. 15 seconds. What do you think? Is 3 a charm? Yeah. Do you have the actual vote? All right. I think we will turn to a voice vote. We will have the actual numbers of votes cast in a couple of minutes, but so that we can conserve our time and move on to our next piece of business, I would like to call for a voice vote. So all in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And any abstentions, nay. The motion has carried. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I believe we have time for one more piece of business this evening, and we will turn now to committee number 5. That is Persephone Hall as the chairperson of committee number 5. And the business that they dealt with in committee number 5 was the resolution declaring the work of the Pattern of Giving in the United Church of Christ complete, and they also dealt with on proposing a new framework for covenantal giving and implementing fundraising best practices. This is a motion that needs a simple majority on this one? On the merged resolution. So I call on Persephone Hall to present the recommended actions of committee number 5. Persephone?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am Persephone Hall from the Connecticut Conference. We were given 2 prudential resolutions to consider. As you heard, the resolution declaring the work of the Pattern of Giving, the United Church of Christ complete, and on proposing a new framework for covenantal giving and implementing fundraising best practices. Our recommendation can be found in the Synod app. If you tap the Synod Business tab, the resolutions as recommended by Synod committees, Committee 5. During our educational intensive, the Reverend Dr. Sheldon Culver provided the historical context where she not only chronicled the policies of giving, but also gave an account of past resolutions related to this topic. During our committee time early on, we agreed by consensus that the 2 resolutions for our consideration could be combined. The passion and care around this topic of fundraising was clear as delegates asked questions and sought to understand the objectives of this resolution. Following a period of clarification, we quickly agreed to combine the 2 resolutions, and from there began the work of crafting the document before you now. From the resolution declaring the work of the Pattern of Giving in the United Church of Christ complete document, we copied lines 59 through 62 and replaced lines 79 through 82 on the proposing a new framework resolution. We also strengthened the document to incorporate language to include all settings of the church and empower congregations and individual donors to donate to the mission priorities that are most compelling to them. Lastly, our revisions foster impactful and effective communications and collaboration. On behalf of Committee 5, I move that the 31st General Synod adopt the resolution on proposing a new framework for covenantal giving and implementing fundraising best practices, and recommend approval as amended by the committee.
Thank you. And would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, thank you.
Please do.
Financial giving is a part of our covenant, the one that we share with one another as a church. We covenant with God and with one another to be a vital presence in the world. The pattern of giving is a policy document that delineates the attempts to control how financial resources are gathered and disseminated across the United Church of Christ. This policy was most recently updated in 1984, 33 years ago. 2 years ago, the UCC board commissioned a giving task force to examine the pattern of giving document and analyze the church's current ecology of generosity. The task force used objective and subjective methodologies in order to examine the culture of giving in the United Church of Christ. As a result of the work of the task force, it was established that essentially we could do better at bringing money in. And the pattern of giving policy document, while appropriate for the time, does not meet the need today. It does not provide an opportunity for the donor to make contributions through a complex and efficient system. Additionally, the results of this system continue to decline. The resolution allows us to explore and experiment with fundraising best practices that center around the donor. Money follows mission. By empowering congregations and individual donors to donate directly to mission priorities that are most compelling to them, we cultivate an ecosystem that coordinates fundraising and capacity building in a spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and flexibility. A lot has changed in 33 years. In 1984, the cost of a first-class stamp was 20 cents. And the cost of a gallon of regular gas was $1.21. Just like you can't do much in 2017 with the 20-cent postage stamp, our current policy of giving no longer adequately serves our needs. On behalf of Committee 5, please support this motion to enable us, as our Reverend Tracy Blackman said, catch up to what God is doing today and create more efficient and effective communication methods of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. So there is a motion on the floor, and we will now entertain discussion. Seeing no one, oops. Can you check in at the parliamentarians' table? Please. And I recognize the gentleman at microphone number 5.
Good evening, and to the chair. It really
Could you please state your name and delegation?
Darrett McCullers, Ministers for Racial, Social, Economic Justice. It really is a question of clarification. In your 2-minute remarks, I don't feel there was enough sufficient detail to explain that currently the funding mechanism goes through, I guess, from the church to the conference and then passes on to national, which reflects our covenant ways of doing things. But then to this, in a way, it changes that whole dynamic. And I want to ask you to speak to that in the sense of, economic justice and fairness, because I know some conferences may lose funds, but national may gain funds. So I want to be sure that we understand what kind of sea change that this will be.
Sir, are you asking for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Or are you opposing the motion?
I would like the chair, she did not address that issue in the remarks, that this is a sea change in the way it currently is and what that impact will be.
So can you frame your question to the presenter?
If you could address the impact that such a change that's being proposed by this resolution could have on conferences that have less of a funding basis, and how it changes actually the way the funds pass through.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
What the resolution does is it provides a way for, basically, as we said earlier, money to follow the mission. So the committee believed that what we were doing was providing more fluid ways and more efficient and effective ways for funds to flow.
Thank you. Seeing no further motion on the floor toward a microphone, are we ready to vote? Oops, wait. I recognize the gentleman at microphone number 4.
I know you recognize me. Hi, I'm Hal Corpenning. I'm with the Rocky Mountain Conference of the United Church of Christ and serve as senior pastor of Plymouth Congregational UCC in Fort Collins. Before I was an ordained minister, I worked on the development staffs of both the University of California, Santa Barbara and Stanford University, and I know a lot about fundraising. One of the substantial differences between church fundraising and other forms of fundraising is we need to talk about God-centered fundraising, not donor-centered fundraising. We also need to do some soul searching in every local church in this denomination. We need to support our national staff. We need to support our conferences. And yes, we do need to support our local churches. And it's also incumbent upon every local church pastor to get over it and learn to talk about money with your congregation. That's the fundamental problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If we can have the question on the stage, on the screen then. We are voting on proposing a new framework for covenantal giving and implementing fundraising best practices, incorporating resolution declaring the work of the pattern of giving in the United Church of Christ. Those are the two resolutions combined. If you are in favor of the motion, please press 1. If you oppose the motion, please press 2. If you are abstaining, please press 3, and voting begins now. This required just a majority vote, as it's a prudential resolution, so the motion has passed. Thank you, Ms. Hall, and committee number 5. Thank you. So now I'm going to welcome our theological reflector again, Reverend Damaris Whitaker, back to the stage to offer our closing theological reflection for this evening's plenary. Damaris?
Friends, what an amazing evening. Every time I leave plenary, I'm so proud to be UCC. Don't you feel the same way? This evening, we heard resolutions about the immigrants and the children, and resolutions that would change the way of our giving in this amazing denomination. But I will call on us this evening to think about what it would mean for us to reprioritize our goals in ministry. I think about the many meeting houses that sit with 20 people in worship and have $2 or $3 million in endowments. I think about the many times we have sacrificed the OCWM ministries and all of those ministries that we give in the national church because we are so connected to that wall that has a peg that our grandmother just put together with two little church ladies so many years ago, and we cannot just leave this building that sits with 10 people because that wall was erected by our grandmother. I think about that tonight we have elected a fabulous justice and witness minister. And how are we going to change our lip service to our actions to support the ministry that we are calling her to do on behalf of this amazing church? This evening, I want us to think about the fact that we have said that we are going to be an immigrant welcoming church. And I'll tell you a very quick story. I am from Puerto Rico, what we call in Puerto Rico, we say Boricua de pura cepa, right? A true Puerto Rican. And I've lived in New England for 30 years plus. And I was just in a boundary training just a few years ago, and I was just talking to one of those hardcore New Englanders. And I just happened to just make a mistake in saying, I'm a New Englander. I've been here for so long. And she looked at me and she said, honey, just because there are kittens in the oven does not make them biscuits. And I said, what? And there's a saying in Puerto Rico that says, can someone turn on the light so that I can understand what she said? And then I realized that welcoming is not enough. That having the immigrant in our churches means that we have to change the way we do business, the way we worship, that we have to include them in the governance of our denomination and our congregations. That just saying welcome is not enough if them being at the table does not change the way we are. And what happens with us is that we like to just take the immigrant and put them in the center of the picture so that we can say, we are an immigrant welcoming church. Because look at these two little immigrants that are in this picture of our church website. But when they say, I would like to be a deacon that is ordained or that does something different, and I would like to pray in a different way, or I would like to join the Prudential Committee or the Executive Committee so that we can do things the way I learned how to do them, we say, honey, just because there are biscuits in the oven does not make it kittens or does not make it biscuits. And you know I'm not a New Englander because I can't figure the biscuits and the kittens out. But we have been called to be a church that changes the way we're doing things. And tonight we are challenged. We are challenged to change the way we administer our gifts. We are challenged to come to the table with authenticity. And we are challenged to go forth with rain on us, just full with the Holy Spirit, and embrace change in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Whitaker. I now call upon our own General Synod Administrator, Lee Foley, to bring us some announcements. Let's give Lee a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. Announcement number one, the communion sets that were used during this afternoon's beautiful community-wide worship are available for sale by the local arrangements committee over in the exhibit hall, and you can find them in booth 804. Those wishing to sign up for tomorrow morning's Speak Out can see Ken Daniel back there where he was signing folks up last evening, and that will be for the Speak Out that will start tomorrow morning's session. The youth at General Synod invites everybody, regardless of your age, to join them in this hall right back here. It's Hall G, and you got to go that way, for a spirited jam session tonight with the Catawba Singers. And everybody's invited, and it'll start, I'm told, right after we get out of here. And a reminder once more, we can't have folks cutting behind the stage to get to the restrooms. We've had somebody trip, and we had somebody knock a projector off over there, so we can't do that. And also, please don't come up on the stage because it's just a hazard for anybody that isn't used to climbing up here. So that's what I have for you tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Lee. The next session of our next plenary starts tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So I declare the third plenary of the 31st General Synod complete. We are now in recess.
St. Paul's United Church of Christ in Evansville, Indiana, opened its gymnasium in the summer of 2010 to provide a safe place for community youth to gather for recreation and education. In addition to gym-based activities, young people may work on crafts, play games, or receive instruction in areas of the arts, such as in music or dance. Help with homework is available, and computers are provided to aid in the completion of schoolwork. To round out the day, a nutritious snack is served at every Open Gym session. Open Gym recently started a co-ed basketball team, and through it, the community youth have learned to work together to achieve a common goal. Although originally intended to be a mission, adults in the congregation quickly formed relationships with the youth coming to Open Gym. Several of the neighborhood youth, curious about their own spirituality, have gone through confirmation and joined St. Paul's as members. The congregation of St. Paul's is well aware of the importance of Open Gym and is committed to its continued success.
At a new church, we're providing year-round school supplies to school-age kids in the community. We also provide career exploration and mentorship to youth and young adults in the community. We also are assisting young adults with finding and maintaining permanent employment.
Hi there, I'm Pat Argue from First Congregational United Church of Christ in Hendersonville, North Carolina. One of the things which Jesus never said was send back your tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to be free. Our church participates monthly in a silent vigil for compassionate immigration reform. We believe, just as my shirt says, that there is no hate, no fear, and we are welcoming to all people.